The stars were calm. The endless black of space stretched in every direction, shining with distant lights. It was supposed to be a safe sector, quiet and empty, a place where the alien armada could regroup before their next conquest. Hundreds of ships floated together, sharp and bright, their silver hulls glowing with soft energy. They were confident, they were strong, and in their numbers they believed they were untouchable. But then, something changed. A ripple passed through their scanners, faint at first, like a shadow moving across light. The technicians worked quickly, scanning again. The signal was strange, heavy, too large for anything they had seen before. The commander of the fleet leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. Ships from many worlds had gathered here, yet none of them could understand the strange reading. "Unknown object detected," whispered one of the officers. The words carried across the bridge. Everyone fell silent. Engines hummed quietly, and the stars seemed to grow colder. At first, they thought it might be a drifting station, maybe even a hidden moon. But as the scanners focused, the truth became clear. A shape appeared from the dark, slowly turning in the void. It was massive, far larger than most of their ships. Its design was strange. No elegant curves, no glowing patterns. It was brutal, sharp-edged, built with steel and purpose. The alien fleet froze. The warship moved with slow power, like a predator that did not need to rush. Its hull was black and scarred, with lines of weapons hidden beneath heavy armor. The silence of space made it more terrifying, for the ship did not speak. It only existed there, watching them. On the command deck, whispers rose. "What kind of species builds this?" asked one voice. The others said nothing. They only stared at the unknown vessel. Their own fleet had more than 100 warships, shining and strong. But somehow, this single shape in the dark made them feel small. The commander's claws tapped. Against the arm of his chair, he had seen many enemies, he had crushed many rebellions. He had fought pirates, raiders, and rivals. But never had he felt this quiet fear, this feeling that the stars themselves were warning him. The warship continued to turn, revealing more of its body. Its surface was scarred with battles long past, yet it stood untouched. Every mark was proof that it had survived where others had fallen. The alien fleet had weapons of light, shields of energy, and speed that outmatched most enemies. But this ship looked different. It looked heavy, unyielding, a weapon built not to escape death but to bring it. No signal came from the warship, no greeting, no threat, only silence. And somehow the silence was worse than any warning. Minutes stretched into what felt like hours. The alien commanders argued, in hushed tones. Some wanted to fire at once to destroy the unknown before it could strike. Others said to retreat, to leave the system and forget this thing they had seen. But no order was given. They only watched, and the warship only watched them. In that moment, the vast alien armada, proud and powerful, felt a strange weakness. For the first time, they saw something that made them question their strength. For the first time, they felt that maybe they were not the hunters of the stars, but the prey. The silent arrival of the human warship had changed everything. The alien fleet floated in silence, 1,000 eyes locked on the massive shape drifting before them. What they had seen at first as only a shadow now revealed itself under the cold light of distant stars. And what they saw made even the bravest captains hesitate. The ship was unlike anything in their records. Their own vessels shone with silver frames, glowing with the energy of advanced shields. Their hulls were smooth, beautiful, and built for both speed and pride. But this ship, this warship, was different. Its design was sharp, brutal, filled with scars that told stories of battles long forgotten. The front of the vessel stretched like the blade of a weapon, a structure built to cut through fire and destruction. Along its sides rested enormous cannons, silent now, but so heavy that even one could reduce a cruiser to ash. The alien officers leaned closer to their viewing screens. Each line of the vessel spoke of purpose, of a species that did not believe in elegance, only survival and victory. "This is no trading ship," whispered one of the younger commanders. His voice shook as he spoke. "This is a warship built by a people who have known endless battles." The others said nothing. For once, the Armada was without words. The vessel's size was monstrous, larger than any carrier the aliens possessed. Its hull was armored in layers upon layers of dark steel, not shining or polished, but raw, scarred, and full of history. Where alien ships reflected beauty, this one reflected fear. And then, the ship's lights came alive across its body. White lines of illumination blinked on like eyes slowly opening. The alien fleet trembled, watching the awakening of a giant. The warship did not speak. It only turned, revealing its endless rows of missile silos, railgun turrets, and weapon batteries that seemed to stretch forever. In that instant, the alien captains realized something terrifying. Their entire fleet, 100 strong, was looking at a vessel built to destroy fleets, not just ships. The Armada froze. On the bridge of the lead alien cruiser, the Supreme Commander stood. His scales tightened with unease. For years, he had conquered without question. He had faced enemies who begged for mercy, who surrendered before battle. But never before had he looked at something that refused to move, refused to speak, and yet spoke louder than any threat. The warship was alive with power, but it did not fire. It simply existed. Its silence was its greatest weapon. For in silence, the aliens felt the weight of its history. The scars of its armor whispered that it had fought, that it had survived, and that it had never once known defeat. One alien officer broke the silence. "Commander, what species builds such a monster?" The Supreme Commander gave no answer. His mind drifted back to old stories, to whispers carried across the stars, stories of a race said to come from a world of death, a race that fought with steel, fire, and blood, a race many believed was only a myth. Humans. The thought struck him like a blade. His claws tightened around the arm of his chair. If the legends were true, then this was not just a warship, it was a message, a warning. The alien fleet, strong and proud, suddenly felt weak. The commanders argued quietly. Some said they should attack with all their strength, believing numbers would crush the monster. Others urged retreat, fearing that even their numbers would not matter against such power. But none moved. The Armada, feared across the stars, waited like prey before a hunter. And as the great warship turned its steel body fully toward them, the aliens understood the truth. For the first time in their long history of conquest, they were staring not at an enemy to conquer, but at a nightmare that had finally stepped out of legend and into reality. It was their first glimpse of a human warship, and already, the Armada knew fear. The alien Armada remained frozen in the cold dark of space. Every ship in the fleet held its position, not daring to move forward. They had seen the scars of the strange vessel. They had felt the weight of its silence, but now, something began to change. On the surface of the massive warship, a low glow spread. Small points of white light blinked awake, one after another, like stars being born, first along its hull, then across its long towers until the entire vessel was outlined in light. The aliens whispered among themselves. Their voices carried fear, for they knew what this meant. The ship was not sleeping. It was not drifting. It was alive. Engines deep inside the beast rumbled to life. Silent vibrations echoed through the scanners of the Armada. The warship turned. With slow power like a mountain shifting in the void, its movements were deliberate, calm, without any sign of fear. A predator that did not need to rush. A hunter that knew the prey was already trapped. Weapon ports opened along its sides, each one heavy, each one larger than the main cannons of the alien cruisers. Massive barrels of steel extended outward, dark against the glow of the stars. The ship's underbelly split open to reveal missile bays row upon row like the teeth of a waiting beast, and yet it did not fire. This made the aliens even more uneasy. A ship that could destroy them all with one strike had chosen to remain silent. That silence carried a message more powerful than words. It was saying, "Move first, and you will die." On the bridge of the Armada's flagship, the officers looked to their commander. His claws dug into his seat. His chest rose and fell quickly. He was not used to fear, but now it pressed against him like a storm. The stories in his mind returned again. The ancient warnings, the whispers of a race called humans. The warship released a sound, a deep metallic growl that echoed across the void. At first the aliens thought it was an engine fault, but then they realized it was deliberate. It was the hum of power building. The vessel was charging. Energy rippled across its surface. Shields came alive, glowing faint blue, stronger and denser than anything the Armada had ever seen. Their own shields shimmered like water, but this human shield looked like solid stone. The alien captains shifted. In their seats, some tightened their grips on the controls. One whispered, "If this ship fires, we cannot stop it." The others did not argue. The warship's main cannon rotated forward, a weapon so large it seemed impossible for any ship to carry. Its barrel glowed faintly red, not in threat, but in readiness. The alien fleet felt as if the universe itself was holding its breath, but the humans did not attack. The ship simply held its aim, waiting, watching, silent. The Armada was filled with unease. They were hunters, always the first to strike. But here, none of them wanted to move. None of them wanted to test the sleeping giant that had now awakened. One alien officer finally broke the silence, his voice shaking. "Commander, if this is truly a human ship, then our weapons will not matter. They are said to build ships not to survive battles, but to end wars." The Supreme Commander said nothing. His eyes were fixed on the beast before him. He knew the officer was right. This ship was not a weapon of defense. It was not a guardian. It was a declaration of power, a warning carved in steel. The alien Armada sat in silence, and the warship, now fully awakened, turned its guns upon them. The void seemed smaller, the stars seemed darker, and every alien heart understood one truth: the humans had arrived and they were not afraid. The alien Armada hung in silence. 100 ships, armed with the most advanced weapons of their empire, stood motionless in the cold black of space. Yet all their pride, all their confidence, was crumbling before the sight of one single warship. The humans had not spoken. The humans had not fired. And still, the Armada felt weaker with every second. On the bridge of the flagship, the Supreme Commander stared at the massive vessel. His mind raced, his claws dug into the arms of his chair. He had led many battles. He had crushed rebellions, destroyed colonies, erased fleets that had dared to resist. But never before had his heart beaten this fast. The warship before him was a monster. Every scar on its hull spoke of battles survived. Every weapon port that opened whispered of destruction beyond imagination. The Armada had numbers, but numbers no longer felt like power. They felt like prey gathered in a trap. Whispers filled the fleet. Captains argued over comms. Some demanded they fire now before the human ship could strike. Others urged patience, warning that a single mistake would doom them all. The voices overlapped, growing sharper, but deep inside none of them truly believed they could win. The Supreme Commander could hear the fear in his officers' voices. It was not anger, not aggression. It was real fear. He hated it, but he felt it too. The warship turned slowly, its massive guns locking onto different ships in the fleet. One after another, cruisers and destroyers found themselves under its shadow. Their shields flared nervously, as if they themselves feared what was coming. The human ship did not fire. It only watched. But that watching was worse than an attack. It was a reminder that the humans were in control. The aliens prided themselves on their technology. Their weapons could cut through almost anything. Their shields could withstand storms of plasma fire. But when they scanned the human vessel, what they found shook them further. The armor was layers upon layers, thicker than any shield they had ever seen. The weapons were overbuilt, monstrous in scale, as if designed to destroy not one ship, not 10, but entire fleets. "This ship is not made for defense," one officer whispered. "It is made for slaughter." "No," one corrected him. The Armada had faced powerful enemies before, but those enemies always showed weakness. They tried to talk, they tried to bluff, they fired first in desperation, but the humans did none of these things. They did not beg. They did not bluff. They simply waited. Their silence was not weakness. It was strength. The aliens began to imagine what would happen if they fired. They pictured their beams striking the human warship, bouncing off its thick armor. They pictured their missiles exploding against shields that refused to fall. And then they pictured the retaliation. One blast from those massive cannons, and entire wings of the Armada would vanish. The more they imagined, the more the fear grew on smaller ships. Some crews whispered that they should flee. Others prayed to their gods. Some sat frozen at their posts, afraid to even breathe too loudly. The silence of the human warship pressed down on them like a weight, suffocating, heavy, unbreakable. The Supreme Commander finally spoke, his voice low. "This is what the old legends warned us of." His officers looked at him in shock. "The humans," he said. "The Deathworlders." The word carried across the bridge like a curse. The younger officers had heard the stories as myths, tales told to frighten cadets. But the older ones knew better. They remembered whispers of a warrior race that survived everything, a race that never surrendered, a race that built ships not for peace, but for war. And now that race was here, the Supreme. Commander's chest grew tight. He had conquered countless systems, but now he understood something terrible. For the first time, he was not the conqueror. For the first time, he was the prey. The Armada remained still, not out of strategy, but out of fear. Every alien eye locked on the human warship. Every alien heart prayed that it would not fire, and, in that frozen moment, the truth was clear. The humans did not need to fight to win, they had already won. The alien Armada held its silence. 1,000 ships surrounded the lone warship, yet none dared to move. Fear spread through every command deck like a shadow. The humans had not fired a single shot, but the Armada already felt defeated. On the flagship's bridge, the Supreme Commander sat frozen. His eyes did not leave the massive vessel. Its dark steel body glowed with faint lines of power, its weapons pointed like claws ready to strike. The commander's heart was heavy, for he knew this feeling. It was the same feeling he had as a young officer when the old veterans whispered their forbidden tales. He remembered the legends. The stories had always been told in secret, shared in dark corners of training academies. Old warriors would warn the young about a race that should never be awakened, a race called humans. They were described as Deathworlders, children of a violent world. They were said to survive storms, beasts, fire, and endless wars. While other species built harmony, the humans built weapons. While others avoided danger, the humans walked into it. The young had laughed at these tales. They called them myths, exaggerations, ghost stories to frighten cadets. But the older soldiers never laughed. They carried scars, not just on their bodies, but in their voices. The commander now felt those voices return. He heard his old teacher whispering again, "If you ever meet them, do not test them. They are not like us. They do not bend. They do not break." On the bridge, one of his officers spoke, "But Supreme Commander, could it be true? Are these the Deathworlders?" His voice cracked. He wanted to believe it was only a story, but the evidence stood before them, steel and alive. Another officer hissed, "It cannot be. They were wiped out long ago. Their wars destroyed them." But her words carried no strength. Her eyes betrayed her fear. The Supreme Commander stayed silent, but inside, he remembered more. Stories of how humans fought each other with fire until their skies turned black. Stories of how they built machines that could burn worlds. Stories of how they never gave up, no matter the enemy, no matter the cost. And then came the darkest memory, the one every old soldier carried, the rumor of the last great war. An alliance of species had once tried to erase the humans, to destroy them before they grew too powerful. Dozens of fleets against a handful of human warships. The records were erased, the history forgotten. But the whispers said the humans did not fall. Instead, they made the void itself their weapon. They vanished into the dark, leaving only silence. Now, as the alien Armada faced the Dauntless, those whispers no longer felt like myth. They felt like warning. The younger captains argued across the channels. Some shouted to fire to prove that humans were nothing but flesh and blood. Others screamed to retreat, to live and tell their people what they had seen. But all their voices trembled. None of them carried the certainty of leaders. On smaller ships, the crews listened too. They remembered the stories their grandparents told, bedtime tales of monsters in the stars, and now they realized those monsters were real, not demons, not myths, but humans. The Supreme Commander's chest tightened. He knew that if they fought now, the Armada would pay dearly. Even if they destroyed the human ship, their losses would be unbearable. And if the stories were true, then this warship was not alone. It was only the beginning. He looked once more at the Dauntless. Its scars told the truth. This ship had already faced death, and it had survived. The humans had not been destroyed. They had been waiting, preparing. The commander whispered. The legends were true. His officers turned to him, silence filling the bridge. We are standing before the warriors of myth, he said, his voice hollow. And we are not ready. The alien Armada, once proud and fearless, now trembled under the weight of old stories made real. For in the shadow of the Dauntless, every legend had come alive, and the worst part was clear. The humans were not done, they were only beginning. The alien Armada floated in silence, 100 ships locked in place. The void between stars had never felt so heavy, so suffocating. The Dauntless, the human warship, loomed like a shadow of doom, silent, yet alive. Its weapons glowed faintly. Its engines rumbled with restrained power. Then it happened. From the Dauntless, a signal crackled across the void. Every ship in the Armada received it at once. Every officer froze as the sound broke through their comms. It was not a scream of threat, not the roar of dominance. It was a calm voice, steady, cold, unshaken. This is the Terran warship. Dauntless, the voice said, slow and clear. Identify yourselves. The words were simple, yet they carried a weight heavier than any weapon. There was no fear in that tone, no hesitation. It was the voice of a predator asking its prey if they wished to live another day. On the flagship's bridge, the Supreme Commander's scales tightened. The sound of the human tongue was strange, sharp, filled with iron. It was not the voice of a species afraid of death. It was the voice of one that had seen death 1,000 times and learned to command it. The officers looked at their commander, waiting. None of them spoke. None dared. The transmission repeated, calm and unyielding. This is the Terran warship Dauntless. Identify yourselves. Fear swept through the Armada. Some captains shouted, across private channels, do not answer. If we answer, we admit weakness. Others hissed back. If we stay silent, they will destroy us. The fleet was breaking apart with panic, not in action but in thought. On smaller ships, young officers whispered to each other, Terran. The word was old. The word was legend. Now it was real. Their grandparents had warned them of Terrans, of humans, of the species that never surrendered. The comms crackled again, the voice unchanged. Identify yourselves. The silence stretched. Every second felt like a blade pressed against the Armada's throat. The Dauntless did not fire, but its weapons tracked the fleet slowly, one cannon after another, turning like the eyes of a hunter watching prey scatter in fear. Finally, one alien captain broke. His voice shook as he answered the transmission. This is the Armada of the Kalar Dominion, he said. His words were weak, his confidence broken. We are passing through neutral space. We mean no challenge. The response from the Dauntless was instant, cold, and final. Neutral space belongs to no empire, the voice said. You are trespassing. The Armada shivered. They had conquered worlds, claimed systems, enslaved species. None had ever dared to challenge their right to rule. Yet, here was one ship, one human ship, calling them trespassers. The humiliation burned deeper than fear, but the fear still won. The Supreme Commander felt his chest tighten. He knew what was happening. This was not just a warning. This was a test. The humans were watching, waiting. They wanted to see if the Armada would act like predators or reveal themselves as prey. The commander's officers whispered around him. Some begged him to answer, to retreat. Others begged him to give the order to fire, but the commander could not speak. His mind was filled with the voice, calm and merciless, a voice that carried not threat, but certainty. Humans did not bluff. Humans did not boast. When they spoke truth. And the truth was clear. If the Armada made the wrong choice, the Dauntless would not hesitate. It would end them. The transmission cut off, leaving silence again. But the silence was worse now. Heavier, sharper. For the aliens knew that the humans had given them a chance most enemies never received. The Supreme Commander finally lowered his head. His voice was low, almost broken. "It is them," he whispered. The legends were true. The Armada, once feared across the stars, had just been reduced to prey with a single human message. The alien Armada remained frozen, a sea of ships stretching across the stars. Each captain sat in silence, their eyes locked on the single warship that had silenced them all. The Dauntless did not move. It did not need to. Its presence was enough, but silence could not last forever. The flagship, the Supreme Commander's officers argued in hushed tones. Fear was heavy in the air. Some said they must retreat, leave this cursed system, warn their people. Others said retreat would mark them as weak. Their empire did not retreat. Retreat meant shame. Then one voice cut through the noise, a younger captain, bold yet desperate. "We outnumber them," he said. "One ship cannot stand against us all." His words carried across the fleet. If they are truly the humans of legend, then we must test them. If they bleed, then the stories are lies. The idea spread like fire. Captains who feared shame more than death began to agree. They could not let their entire armada be held hostage by a single ship. Pride demanded proof. The Supreme Commander clenched his jaw. He knew this was dangerous, yet his silence gave consent. And so, the plan was set. A small group of scout ships would move forward. Their task was simple: approach the Dauntless, probe its strength, and test if the human monster was as terrible as the legends claimed. 5 sleek cruisers broke formation. Their engines flared as they glided through the void. Their crews trembled, but their captains forced them forward. Behind them, the rest of the Armada watched in tense silence. On the Dauntless, nothing changed. The massive ship drifted calmly, its weapons locked in place, its shields glowing faintly. It was as if the humans had not even noticed the scouts, but everyone knew they had. The scout ships spread out, forming a half-circle around the Dauntless, their scanners lit up, searching for weaknesses. Their weapons warmed. One captain whispered, "Look at its armor. So heavy, so primitive. Surely it cannot withstand concentrated fire." Another hissed, "Perhaps it is already damaged. Perhaps it only pretends to be strong." The first shot came like lightning. A scout ship fired a lance of plasma across the void. The beam struck the Dauntless's side. The alien fleet held its breath, waiting, hoping. The plasma hit the human hull. A bright flare lit up the dark. And then, nothing. The Dauntless did not move. Its shield shimmered once faintly, then returned to silence. The plasma had done nothing, not even a scar. On the alien flagship, officers gasped. The scout captain who had fired felt his courage shake. Yet, another captain, desperate to prove himself, shouted, "Again, all of us, fire together." The 5 scouts unleashed their weapons, beams of energy, missiles of fire. Plasma bolts streaked through space. The void lit up with destruction as their combined strength crashed against the Dauntless. But the Dauntless endured. Its shields flared like a wall of stone, absorbing every strike. The human ship did not flinch, did not retreat. It simply waited, and then it answered. One cannon rotated, slow and deliberate. Its barrel glowed with deadly light. The scout crews screamed orders, shields raised, engines flared, but it was too late. The Dauntless fired a single shot. The beam tore through the void faster than thought. The lead scout ship vanished, ripped apart in an instant. The explosion lit the darkness, leaving nothing but scattered fragments. The other scouts froze. Their weapons fell silent. Their engines stuttered. They were predators moments ago, but now they were prey caught in the jaws of something far greater. The Dauntless did not fire again. It did not need to. One shot was enough. One shot told the entire Armada the truth. This was not a ship built for show. This was not a relic. This was a weapon built to end fleets. On the flagship, the Supreme Commander felt his throat tighten. He had hoped the legends were exaggerations. Now he knew they were not. The humans had built ships that could crush empires. The Armada was silent. Once more, fear turned to dread. Pride turned to doubt. Every captain understood the truth. The test had been made and the humans had passed. The fire of the scouts still lingered in the darkness, faint echoes of plasma and broken debris drifting in silence. The alien Armada watched the wreckage of their own ship scatter across the stars. One human shot had ended it. One single strike had turned confidence into terror. The Dauntless did not move. It did not chase, it did not boast. It simply lowered its cannon as if saying the lesson was already given. The silence returned. But it was heavier now, crushing every heart inside the Armada. On the flagship, the Supreme Commander stood frozen. His claws trembled, though he tried to hide it. He had seen fleets fall. He had destroyed empires. But never had he seen such control, such ruthless precision. The humans had not wasted fire. They had not unleashed chaos. They had chosen one ship, and they had erased it. It was not destruction, it was demonstration. The officers on his bridge whispered to one another. "One shot, only one," said one in disbelief. Another hissed, "That cannon!" It was like a star tearing open. The youngest among them whispered the word again, a word that now felt like doom. Humans. Across the Armada, panic rippled. Crews spoke in frightened tones. Some begged their captains to retreat. Others prayed silently. Some stared at the Dauntless with wide eyes, unable to look away. The fleet that once conquered without hesitation now felt like a herd of prey, under the gaze of a single predator. One scout ship, still alive, tried to flee. Its engines roared as it turned sharply. Rushing away from the Dauntless, the entire Armada held its breath. Would the humans destroy it too? Would they chase it down? But the Dauntless did nothing. It simply watched. Its guns stayed silent. The fleeing scout vanished into the distance. The Armada understood the message. The humans did not need to hunt them all. They only needed to show what would happen if they did. The Supreme Commander closed his eyes for a moment. He understood too well. The humans had chosen restraint, not weakness. They had shown the Armada mercy, but not kindness. That was far worse. It meant the humans were in control. It meant they had already decided the Armada was not worth killing. The fear turned deeper. Because mercy from a predator is not safety, it is judgment. The wreckage of the destroyed scout drifted past the alien ships, twisted metal glowing faintly. For the crews watching, every shard was a warning. The humans could destroy them at will, yet chose not to. That power, that choice, was more terrifying than death itself. The commander finally spoke, his voice low, almost broken. "We are not facing soldiers," he said. "We are facing executioners." His officers looked at him in shock, but none argued. They all knew it was true. The Dauntless shifted slightly, turning its dark hull. Its weapons followed, aiming at different ships one by one. The Armada flinched each time the cannon stopped. Every crew felt their hearts stop when the giant gun turned toward them. They knew the humans could erase them as easily as they had erased the scout, and yet the Dauntless remained quiet. Its silence was a roar louder than any threat. It was patience. It was confidence. It was control. The aliens now understood the scale of the danger. Their own weapons were powerful, but they were weapons built for wars. They knew it: quick battles, numbers, intimidation. But the human weapon was built for something else. It was not made to win battles. It was made to end them in a single shot. The Supreme Commander gripped the arms of his chair. His claws dug into the steel. His voice cracked. "We cannot fight this, not with numbers, not with strength." His words spread like fire across the Armada. The proud fleet of conquerors had no answer. Their greatest strength, numbers, was useless. One shot had destroyed not only a ship, but their very belief in victory. The Dauntless floated before them, silent, watching, waiting. And in that silence, the Armada finally understood the truth. One human shot was enough to shatter an empire. The Armada had seen enough battles to know how ships were built. They had studied the designs of 100 species, some built for speed, some for elegance, some for balance. Each had its strengths and weaknesses. Each could be understood, copied, or broken. But the Dauntless was different. The alien officers scanned the human warship again and again, desperate. To understand it, the results only made their fear grow. Every part of the Dauntless seemed wrong by their standards, yet every part spoke of terrible purpose. The hull was layered in thick armor, not smooth, not elegant. It was rough, scarred, heavy. Some officers whispered it looked primitive. But the truth was clear. This armor was not meant to shine, it was meant to survive. Plasma blasts, missile storms, even direct collisions. This ship had been built to endure them all. Its weapons were worse. The cannons were overbuilt, monstrous, far larger than needed for a single enemy. They were weapons meant to pierce shields, tear through entire carriers, and keep firing without pause. Missile bays lined the vessel's belly, stacked row upon row like endless teeth. Railguns, torpedo, tubes, laser turrets, every weapon humans had ever invented seemed carved into its steel. The aliens whispered in disbelief. "This ship is not balanced," one said. "It is madness. It carries too many weapons, too much weight. No species builds like this." But deep down they knew the truth. Humans did. Humans built ships not to survive battles but to win wars. The scans revealed even more. The engines were massive, glowing, with brutal energy. Not graceful, not efficient. They were designed to push this giant into motion, to carry it across light years without rest. The power readings made some officers shiver. It was not built for speed, but for persistence. The humans had created a ship that could follow enemies forever. And the shields, oh the shields. Alien shields shimmered like water, delicate but strong. The Dauntless's shields were different, dense, layered, almost solid. They absorbed fire without breaking, not bending but crushing every strike beneath. Their strength. The Supreme Commander stared at the reports in silence. He knew what he was seeing. This ship was not a vessel of science, not a vessel of peace. It was war given shape. Every bolt, every scar, every weapon spoke of a people who saw the universe not as a home, but as a battlefield. His officers argued again, their voices cracked with fear. No ship can hold so much power. It should break itself apart, one insisted. Another whispered, "Maybe that is why they are feared. They do not care if it breaks, they only care if it kills." The commander remembered the old stories. Humans were said to be creatures who endured the harshest of worlds, storms that could crush, predators that could kill, and yet they survived. Their technology reflected their nature. It was not beautiful, but it was unyielding. It was not delicate, but it was merciless. The Armada finally understood the difference. Their own ships were built like rulers' thrones, symbols of control and dominance. The human ship was built like a blade, meant to cut, to strike, to end. The Dauntless floated silently. Its scars glowed faintly in the light of distant suns. Each mark was proof of battles survived, victories earned, enemies destroyed. This was not theory. This was proof. One young alien officer whispered, almost in awe, "They built this not to survive, but to win." The words spread across the bridge, carried into the silence. No one argued, because they all knew it was true. The Supreme Commander lowered his head. His pride burned. His fear grew. In that moment he understood why entire species had feared the humans. They were not just another empire. They were not just another predator. They were engineers of war, creators of ships that carried death across the stars. The Dauntless did not fire again. It did not need to. The design itself was the weapon. The Armada, once proud, now trembled under the shadow of human design.